Welcome to the launch for the Global Action Partnership for Extended Producer Responsibility. Thank you for being here. We're very pleased to see you. I see the numbers keeping on climbing. When I started speaking, we were in the 80s. We are now 112. We're expecting 600 participants. So we're very excited to be having all of you join us today afternoon. As you can imagine, 600 people in one call is quite a task. So I'd like to share some guidelines. I don't think you have microphones, but just in case you get a microphone, please keep your microphone on mute unless you're the one speaking. Please open your chat window and use it to stay abreast of all the messages that we're going to be sending to you in case there are messages. I think right now there are no messages. I was just looking to see what's in the chat. I think at this moment there's nothing in the chat, but there will be updates and links and so on, which we will share. You can test whether your reactions are working by you raising your hand or lowering your hand. That's a good way for us to know. I see your hand, Rosie, Arunya, Linka, thank you. Lorraine, I see your hand, thank you. Honey, I see your hand. Will go. Klaus, great. So I see it's working. I think now there are 18 hands raised. I can't even see all the people whose hands are raised, but I'm happy to know that this function works. So in case we need to get you to use it, we will ask you to do that. We are going to share a Slido link in the chat, and we're going to do some very quick introductions. The first thing I'm going to do is ask you if it's possible to rename yourself in Zoom, to rename yourself so that you have your name and the organization you represent. I'm just going to put an example in the chat. So you can use the same formula that I put in the chat to rename yourself. To rename yourself, it should be possible to hover on your name, hover on the 3 dots on the extreme right, and you should be able to rename yourself. For those who are very fast and have already renamed yourselves, you can also join us on Slido. And we're going to do our introductions on Slido. And here, I just want to know which city in the world are you joining us from? I'm going to give it a moment to see when people start to join Slido, and then I'm going to share the Slido screen. Great, I see some action. So what I'm going to do now is try and share it so that you can also see what I can see. I think some of my pictures, Hopefully you can all see what I can see. So I can see people are joining us from Germany. Germany is not a city. Berlin, Cologne, London. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this right. Sranyanin, I think. I see Rio de Janeiro, Oslo, Nairobi, Palm Beach, Hanoi. It's amazing. People are joining us from all over the place. So the ones with the bigger names means there's joining us. My apologies. I think Zoom doesn't like that I'm talking to you a lot today, but I'm back. And it's great to be back. So it's amazing. I see people joining us from all over the world. I'm going to leave it open for the time being so that people can keep joining us. I see Tirana, I see Munster, I see Washington. Good morning. Amsterdam, good afternoon. Buenos Aires, good morning. Tallinn. Good afternoon, I think. In Tallinn, it should be afternoon. But it's good to see people from all these cities. Welcome. I'm now going to be introducing our host for today, one of our many hosts. I'll be introducing members of the hosting team as and when they will be speaking to us so that we don't spend the whole beginning of this call in introductions. And the first person I'm going to be introducing is Nicole Benson. Nicole is the coordinator of the Secretariat of the Prevent Waste Alliance. She has been engaged in setting up the Prevent since its beginning in 2019, and she's now coordinating the Secretariat. She's passionate about the topic of a circular economy and a strong believer in the power of collaboration. And Nicole is going to be saying a few welcome words. Thank you, Nicole. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth, for that introduction. And yeah, good day, I must say. Morning, evening, ladies and gentlemen, friends, circular economy community. I have the honor to warmly welcome all of you in the name of the Prevent Waste Alliance, OECD, WWF, GIZ, and would like to send out a particular thank you to UNEP and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Together, we would like to launch the Global Action Partnership for Extended Producer Responsibility today. I am really overwhelmed by the number of participants and registrations for this event and really excited to see all of you here. Because the objective of today's session is particularly to present the Global Action Partnership and its different features to all of you, to receive some feedback from you on what we have prepared, and also to show you how you can get engaged in the Global Action Partnership. And in the spirit of bringing together different kinds of perspectives, we have also invited some panelists from the private sector, the public sector, and the informal sector to look at extended producer responsibility from different perspectives and angles. So we have an exciting program ahead of us, and I do not want to steal a lot of time with introductory words, but rather wish us all a very successful and insightful event. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Nicole. I was just looking very quickly. I think already in the question and answer function, we have 3 questions. So I didn't know what that was, but I just realized some people don't have the chat function working. I'm very sorry, but I think there are about 2 or 3 people who have already reported that their chat function is not working. Maybe just ask by a show of hands how many people's chat function is not working so that we have an idea. That's going up very rapidly. So it's probably then not active for all the attendees. Okay, thank you for giving us this feedback. We now know that the chat is not working. Thankfully, we have Slido. We're going to be engaging over Slido. So for those who just joined, every time we use Slido, we will make sure to share the QR code so that you have an idea. And as Noel says, please use the Q&A feature on Slido to leave comments and feedback. This will definitely get back to us. And we really apologize. We joined as panelists and we didn't realize that this chat function wasn't working uniformly for everyone. Okay, at this moment, I'd like to introduce another member of the partnership. And this is Peter Borky. Peter Borky is the circular economy lead at the OECD. And he's going to be making a presentation on the opportunities and challenges of extended producer responsibility. He has been working on international and local environmental policy issues for 25 years. He is currently leading the work on waste management, resource productivity, and the circular economy at the OECD Environment Directorate. Peter.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction, Elizabeth, and good day to everyone, assuming that it's still daytime where you are. I will provide you with a brief introduction to extended producer responsibility. And for that, I have a few slides that I would like to share. So I'm bringing them up now. Going full screen, hopefully. There we are. Elizabeth, can you just confirm that this is full screen mode?
Yes, this is full screen mode.
Brilliant. So my brief introduction will really focus in on, where we are with EPR globally at present, and then focus in on some of the opportunities and challenges around EPR. And first of all, why was EPR actually invented? So what you can see here is a projection of municipal solid waste generation to 2050, which we've taken from our OECD Global Material Resources Outlook, and which is based on World Bank's the World Bank's Water Waste 2.0. And what this projects is that municipal waste generation per year is going to double by 2050. And in low and middle income countries, it's even going to triple. So the context where EPR was invented maybe 30 years ago in the 1990s, essentially in Europe, was very similar. Very fast growth in municipal waste generation, scarce landfill capacity, and a need to find alternative ways of dealing with waste. And this is where extended producer responsibility was then invented as a way to increase material recovery, collection and recovery, and divert as much waste from landfill and incineration as possible. And I think this situation is very similar in a lot of countries still. And even today in advanced economies, we still find this context. So how does EPR work? What is EPR? So what you can see here on the slide is the typical setup of EPR take-back systems, as we call them. Typically, there is legislation that sets a take-back obligation and recycling targets, and assigns these to producers to implement. Producers then finance producer responsibility organizations that they set up. They are often stakeholders or shareholders in these producer responsibility organizations. And producer responsibility organizations then set up the waste collection and recycling, working with municipalities and municipal waste collection services, working with recyclers. And then, of course, there's oversight coming from the side of government. So this is the typical setup. Let me just highlight two important points. Despite the very central role that the private sector is playing in EPR, EPR cannot be run by the private sector on its own. Really, the role of government in providing support and oversight is very central. Government needs to provide essentially a level playing field and enforce environmental standards on operators. And second, EPR is also not a tax. EPR fees are usually not paid to the government, but producers, as you can see here on the slide, provide fees directly to producer responsibility organizations, which then pay for the services. So those are two very important points, I think, to understand how EPR works. And as you can see, EPR is in fact already a policy mix of several instruments: take-back requirement and recycling targets. That's then translating into a cost or a fee that producers need to pay. So where is EPR being used? So the use of EPR has grown very fast. Actually, last time we looked, which is almost 10 years ago, there were already more than 400 EPR systems across the world, most of them in packaging, e-waste, batteries, tires, and end-of-life vehicles. Most of these EPR systems 10 years ago were working and functioning and in place in advanced economies. And let's take a closer look at extended producer responsibility for packaging. So what you can see here, and this is data that comes from Lorax, is back in 2000, essentially 20 years ago, 23 years ago, packaging EPR systems were really only existing in Europe. Since then, the situation has changed quite dramatically. And you can see that in various forms, EPR for packaging are now being applied in all continents. However, there's an important difference. While they are very well established in the global north and essentially functioning with concrete results, they are more in the process of being implemented or being considered in the global south. So there's less experience, empirical experience with their successful implementation there. So going to the next slide, what are actually the main aims of extended producer responsibility? So EPR principally aims to shift some of the costs of waste management from the public sector, typically municipalities, to producers and consumers, to increase material recovery rates, and to incentivize producers to better design their products and make them more easily recyclable. And I'd like to go through these three objectives very briefly and see what has been achieved there. And again, the empirical insights on what's been achieved are mostly coming from advanced economies in the world, because this is where there's more exposed experience. So EPR has been very effective at generating revenues for waste management. And as you can see here, just taking one example, France, the annual revenue coming from different EPR systems for packaging, e-waste, etc. in France stands at almost 2 billion euros. And it represents a very significant part of municipal waste management costs as well. Equally, I think there's not much debate about the fact that EPR has also significantly supported improved recycling rates and material recovery rates in the countries and on the waste streams that they're been applied for. This is a very rough indicator because this is the evolution of recycling rates in OECD countries between, for the last 20 years, basically, that you can see here. So this is all municipal waste. And of course, we don't have EPR systems for all municipal waste in all OECD countries. But you can see a very significant increase in recycling rates and a decrease in landfilling. And last but not least, and maybe this is where EPR has been least effective, is in incentivizing eco-design and waste prevention. And here, this is essentially linked to the fact that EPR systems are implemented as collective producer responsibility systems. So producers do not get an individual incentive to actually improve the design of their systems. This is now being addressed through something that we call fee modulation or modulated fees to incentivize eco-design. So finally, and this is really my last slide, clearly EPR is a very promising approach and actually a well-tested one as well to help address waste management challenges and support a shift towards circularity. But the complexity of the issues at stake also involve that there are a long list of challenges that need to be addressed to basically get us there. And that's both true in advanced economies and also in less developed economies. And so let me just talk briefly to that. So in advanced economies, some of the key challenges really consist in increasing the effectiveness and the economic efficiency, so lowering the cost essentially of EPR systems. as well as generating incentives, as I've said before, also upstream in the value chain on product design and waste prevention, which requires technological, organizational, and policy innovation. In emerging markets and developing countries, there are a number of very specific challenges that need to be addressed. Just think of oftentimes the presence of a large informal waste sector that's involved in waste management. Think of weak municipal waste management capacities in a lot of rural municipalities. That's often the case. And that means that they require specific approaches. And there's also a need for capacity development that is hampered by a fragmentation of expertise in the sector. And at the international level, there is a need for more cooperation, coordination of efforts, and pooling of resources. So these are some of the challenges that collectively with our partners in the Global Action Partnership, we're for EPR, we're trying to address. And it is clear that the international significance of EPR is constantly growing. I think that's also shown quite strongly, actually, recently in negotiations around the Global Plastics Treaty. Also, I think last week, the inaugural forum on EPR was held under the Basel Convention Plastic Waste Partnership. And so these developments underline the importance of EPR and the necessity for concerted efforts. The forum, the Basel Forum aims to foster dialogue, dissemination of best practices, and emphasize the linkage with the Basel Convention, while I think what we're trying to do with the Global Action Partnership for EPR will complement these activities by providing technical assistance and a platform for EPR professionals to share knowledge. So without further ado, I think I should now hand back to Elizabeth and allow us all to go into a deeper presentation of the Global Action Partnership and then the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. And I can see a lot of people engaging with what you're saying. We even have a question, actually 2 questions in the Q&A. Just to let the participants know that because we're trying to save time, what we're going to do with the questions is collect them. And then we're going to see if they're frequently asked questions, we're going to be uploading the responses to those on the website at some point in the future. There was also a question about whether you'll have access to the materials from the session. Yes, the resources will be shared, and there will also be a recording which will be available, uploaded to the website, and therefore you will be able to access it in its entirety whenever you want to. So keep the questions coming, keep the comments coming. We're keeping our eyes open for them, and definitely some action will be taken after the call on them. Kadi, I saw your request about French. Unfortunately, we don't have translation. I hope you'll be able to follow in English. And we will note this for any future events on the platform. Okay, I want to hand over back to Nicole to tell us a few things, and then we will. Yes, so Nicole.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks, Peter, also for highlighting the different, on our understanding of extended producer responsibility and the different challenges that we still face regarding EPR. And I think that pretty much also is the reason or motivation why the Global Action Partnership has come together. About a year ago at the Prevent Circular Solutions Festival, some of you might have heard like the first broad strokes of the idea of the Global Action Partnership, then still under the name of One Stop Shop for EPR. And in the meantime, as I said earlier, GIZ, WWF, and OECD have partnered to establish the now Global Action Partnership for EPR. This partnership is hosted by the Prevent Waste Alliance and receives circular economy support from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and works in very close cooperation with UNEP on providing technical support to governments and producer responsibility organizations. So yeah, since that first pitch 1 year ago, we have had like many internal and external discussions to identify what the biggest needs are, what the challenges are, and how we as partners can join forces to best address these. And yeah, and today is the exciting basically moment where we can present these different kinds of features that we have developed to all of you. And what we would like to highlight, however, is despite already having like some broad ideas, we really see this moment as like the launch of a process, basically. And we would really like to invite all of you to co-create this process and this partnership with us. Yeah, so we really designed, or we really want to design this partnership in a way that it is most useful for the implementers of extended producer responsibility around the world. And yeah, as I said, it's just the beginning of a long journey, and we would really like to invite all of you to embark on this journey with us. So I think now is the exciting moment. Are you all ready? I would like to invite, yeah, Peter, Dorothee, Fong, John, who else is missing? Ambro on stage, basically, with me, and then we can count down for the launch, the official launch moment. So 3, 2, 1. Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Now, the Global Action Partnership website is live. Feel free to have a look at it maybe after the session. And yeah, let's hear a little bit more about the Global Action Partnership in detail. And with that, I think I already directly hand over to you, Dorothee.
Maybe before Dorothee speaks, I introduce her.
Sure.
Great. So we're going to hear more about the Global Action Partnership for EPR. And we're going to hear this from 3 amazing speakers. Dorothee Berkeley is an advisor for the circular economy at the GIZ. She works in the GIZ project Environmental Protection Worldwide, which is part of a BMUV-funded export initiative, Environmental Protection. As a geographer, she has worked in various positions, such as a journalist, a public relations officer, a consultant, promoting sustainable topics such as renewable energy and circular economy. We're also going to hear from Feng Wang, and Feng is a program officer and coordinator for plastics at the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, for those who normally use the acronym. Feng has been working in UNEP on topics including circular economy, sustainable consumption and production, and life cycle assessments. Currently, he is the coordinator of a UNEP One Plastics initiative to facilitate the design and implementation of plastics-related projects and activities in UNEP. And we're also going to hear from Ambro Miserocci. And Ambro is the policy manager at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. He works as a policy manager, and he sits on the Business Coalition for Global Plastics Treaty Secretariat. He holds an MSc in Environmental Engineering for Natural Resources Management and has previous work experience in the NGO and corporate world. He is currently working on the identification of key intervention points to drive and accelerate the transition towards a circular economy, with a particular focus on the plastic sector. So, Dorothee, please go ahead.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Noel, I would like to share my screen. And here we are. I hope this has worked. I think so, yes. Yeah, a hearty welcome from my side. Since there's so many different time zones here, I think I start with a hello to be in the right time zone everywhere. So I just shared the launched in this moment launched a website of the Global Action Partnership for EPR, and we would like to have a deeper look inside of this website. But first, we would like to start with whom do we want to reach with the Global Action Partnership. And here we can say that we want to support all interested partners and parties developing or implementing EPR systems, and this during all implementation phases. So if you are a member of the government in a country that wants to introduce EPR systems or is interested in, or if you are from an organization that has been mandated by its government to set up an EPR system, especially a PRO, or any other stakeholders looking for exchange on EPR with peers, then the Global Action Partnership for EPR is the right space for you to get engaged. As already mentioned, the Global Action Partnership has got 3 pillars: a library, help desk, and the community. And I would like to start with the library now. And as you can see here, we have already shared lots of information here. This pillar helps to create a common understanding on EPR and to promote it as a policy tool. The idea is that here, again, we're at the one-stop shop. This is the place where you find all relevant information on EPR. And on the other hand, it's a place where we have collected and also curated the most relevant, transferable, and up-to-date publications. So it's not an overflow of information, it's the most relevant information. So far, we have published here knowledge content of consortium partners of the GAP. However, this is an invitation to share your publications that you would like to have included in this library. And here is the place where you can submit your publications, and then, of course, it gets checked, but then it will be published on this website again. And also, if you have new interesting content, it's an invitation to organize events and share your new insights, because the community only lives when we meet and exchange. And also, this will lead us to develop common principles and definitions on EPR. So this pillar is open for everyone who is interested. No membership needed, neither to read nor to submit your publications. And then we go over to the second part. It's the technical support. And this is welcome to our help desk. The Global Action Partnership offers coordinated and tailored technical support. And how does it work? If you submit a request here on this website, Prevent, as a host of the Global Action Partnership, channels your request either to the community of practice. Prevent maybe can set up a peer learning session or just answer your question if it's short. And in addition, if a more detailed support is requested, our expert pool comes into the play. And here we offer 3 levels of support. First is a short-term, where a short-term expert engagement session can be arranged on a predefined topic. Medium-term, that means consultancy on a concrete case or a set of questions. And also the long-term consultancy, which means holistic engagement and consultancy during conception or introduction phase. Here, however, a separate tender would be necessary. So as a first step, the Global Action Partnership has identified experts or expert organizations with a profound knowledge on EPR. And the next step would be that you set up your request here and Prevent is going to match you. And this is if you want to request for help. And here is also the option if you want to join as an expert. This would also be the place to do so. And then Prevent is going to reach out to you. Having said this, I want to hand over to Fong Bang from UNEP, who we are in close collaboration with on providing technical support to governments and PROs. Fong, take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dorothy, for the nice introduction. I would also like to take the opportunity to congratulate my fellow colleagues and agencies for launching the Global Action Partnership for EPR. I will only spend very few minutes to explain the concept and also the approach of the EPR Help Desk. Essentially, over the years, UNEP and also the partners, we have received a lot of requests and also demands to provide technical support to countries and also to private sector PLO system to either develop or to further improve the EPR legislation system and implementation. And as Dorothy shared that there is a very wide range of source of materials, tools being created and knowledge. And also we realized that the live knowledge exists and also being, let's say, owned by a lot of experts within the EPR community from government and business. So by linking the demand and also the knowledge from expert, we thought it would be great to set up a help desk so that we can answer day-to-day questions, inquiries, and also, let's say, ask for support to provide to different partners. Having this idea that thanks to also the members and also experts from Prevent Waste Alliance and also all the experts from different communities and organizations, we plan that it will be a great idea to formulate this expert pool and also to organize consultations, support, and also in-depth discussions to see how we can actually bring the knowledge to the countries and also the PRO system. So essentially, what we are doing here is that we see there are many, many common issues that's cross-cutting for different countries and PO system. But in many cases, we also need tailored solutions and also real-time problem-solving support and assistance. By doing this, we also need to understand what is the common approach and also the, let's say, general principles and then learning and what are the specific support. And this is where we started the pilots that we issued a target call for interest and to test how we can best support the government and the PO system. And under the thinking that we hope we'll find a best way to streamline the way of support to make it efficient so that we give sufficient specific support to countries and PO without also repeating all the knowledge learned. By doing this, we issued a call for pilots, and the pilots has been supported by our donor Norwegian Retailers Fund. And through a short and targeted call for proposal, we're happy to announce that we selected 2 PRO systems that's coming from Malaysia and also from Argentina. They will join us a 6-month journey to help us to identify a way what is the best efficient modality to make sure there are sufficient interaction between the experts of EPR community and the PRO system. What exactly the support we can provide in terms of webinars, problem solving, technical support and tools, so that by learning from this pilot, we can also learn and conclude a more, let's say, systemic, but also more streamlined support, so that we can open up for the support towards more governments and also the PRO system. And today we also have Mr. Roberto Panatello from, let's say, Malaysia's PRO system in the panel. He can also talk more about it. So I would like to conclude my introduction that we are currently testing the best way and the best modality and means and also outputs to provide to governments and PRO system on the support. We are happy to learn from this pilot in the coming 6 months and hopefully to provide broader and more extensive support to more countries and also to more system. This is an introduction of the technical help desk. And if you have any suggestion or feedback or request, please do send it to our way. With this, I would also like to hand over the floor to my colleague Ambrogio. So Ambro will be also talking about this community, how we work with experts, and also government partners, business, and others together, so that we have a learning environment and also sharing practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fang, and let me echo what you said in congratulating the OECD, GIZ, and WWF for partnering and creating this Global Action Partnership. And I'm more than honored for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to provide circular economy support in all of this journey. And I will talk about the third pillar that was mentioned before, so the one around community. And this community pillar is very much important because if we heard and listened to what the previous speaker said, the relevance of EPR is very much acknowledged all around the world. And it's a policy tool that has been used to address the current challenges. But speakers also outlined that more work lies ahead and that questions still remain unsolved, both at the domestic and at the international level. And so this group here of people and organizations believes that the cooperation in order to advance on EPR lies at the heart of innovation. And more countries at the moment are putting EPR on their agendas, and an increasing number of organizations are focusing on developing implementation measures. And all together it will be possible to coordinate the efforts, share the knowledge, and be at the forefront of innovative EPR design. So EPR is, of course, a policy tool widely recognized by different stakeholders and different actors and different groups. And this is true also including businesses. And but we also need to acknowledge that with that never-growing number of EPR regulations and legislations around the world, it will be important to understand how to best overcome challenges and address international markets and global supply chains. And at the same time, of course, there are practical gaps to be filled and challenges to overcome. And so this is why it is really important that all of these actors come together and join the efforts in an international EPR community to firstly discuss and exchange in order to create a space and a community of practice, but also to facilitate the sharing of best practices and lessons learned by creating and facilitating a global exchange going beyond the current knowledge, connecting countries that have requested engagement, including very specifically a South-South exchange on this topic. Secondly, the community will be able to provide support, provide peer-to-peer learning, and really create a platform to do some matching and partnership building exercise, connection with local actors, and allocation through the help desk that Dorothy mentioned before. Thirdly, this community will allow us to think ahead jointly on how to innovate EPR, to leverage the full potential of EPR and progressively learn how to deliver on the full list of benefits that EPR comes with. It can provide a space for critical discussion, exploration of relevant topics, testing ideas, confronting on ideas, and really in the first presentation, Peter mentioned that we are advancing from simple targets in addressing design to more advanced things like eco-modulation or support for reuse. So and this is still in the making. So we really need to understand how do we get there. We don't have that knowledge at the moment. And lastly, of course, by bringing all the actors together, we will be able to contribute in a constructive way to the relevant international processes. So just to conclude, the Global Action Partnership for EPR will strive to offer in different formats for the EPR community to come together. Just to mention one example, there already exists an EPR working group that is at the moment a closed space for only the Prevent members. But of course, the partnership will offer more publicly available webinars, resources, events organized by the core partners or other external parties. And as Nicole said before, the partnership will start by focusing on plastic and packaging. But it was also mentioned at the beginning of the launch that this is only the beginning of the process. This is the first step in the process. This group was born to explore and progressively expand into new areas of work, fill the knowledge gaps, and start looking into other sectors beyond packaging. For example, on textiles, electronic, it was mentioned in the Q&A already, agriculture. So this really wants to be the space where people come together for a community discussion and advance in the understanding and the knowledge around EPR. So I will stop here, Nicole, and I will hand over back to you to continue the conversation today. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ambo, Fong, and Dorothee for presenting the pillars of the Global Action Partnership. And I saw that in the chat and in the Q&A, there's quite a lot of interest based on the presentation, which is really good. We've tried to answer some of those questions in the chat immediately. And as Elizabeth said, we'll try to have a Q&A or like an FAQ, that's what you call it,
Yes.
where we publish all the answers. And yeah, right now I would just very, very briefly put in a nutshell what the Global Action Partnership wants to achieve. And as you have heard from the speakers before me, it is the main idea is really to provide a simplified access. We want to bundle the different support, the knowledge, the resources that are already out there in a kind of like one-stop shop, so that it is easier to access support on implementing extended producer responsibility. And we particularly want to also make use of the wisdom of the crowd. So all of your wisdom on like the experiences of implementing EPR, etc. For example, by facilitating peer learning. And of course, we want to coordinate the support that is offered to the different EPR practitioners in a coordinated way. So yeah, the idea is really to join forces, make use of the power of the network, and really also try to leverage funding for extended producer responsibility through the Global Action Partnership. So that's basically the Global Action Partnership in a nutshell. And yeah, back to you, Elizabeth, for the facilitation.
Thank you, Nicole, and also thank you to Dorothee, Feng, and Ambro. I think we've had quite a bit from the team about what is the Global Action Partnership for Extended Producer Responsibility. And now we would like to hear a bit more from you. So to engage, we're going to go back to using Slido, our engagement tool. And thank you, Noel, for sharing the code. So for everybody who's not yet on Slido, you can either scan the QR code or you can go to slido.com and enter the number 2145025. And then I'm going to stop sharing Nicole's screen so that I can share my screen. And just to show you that even on Slido, we have quite a number of questions already collecting. People are very keen, and you can also vote for your best question. I think I'm going to stop sharing, Nicole. And then I'm just going to open the next poll. Okay, so I'm sorry, I hope I'm now back. I think I'm having internet problems, so I'm not going to try and share screen. I think it's too much for my internet. So here we go. The first question would like to find out which support feature offered by the Global Action Partnership for Extended Producer Responsibility is most relevant to you. Unfortunately, you can't see this, but 66% of you love the community, 49% love the library, and 37% love the technical support. It keeps changing as people vote, so please keep voting for this. It seems the community is definitely the most popular feature, but let's see how that ends up. So I'm going to give slightly like a minute, and then I'm going to move to the next one. Yeah, it has changed again. Community is now at 57%, still the most popular. Library 51% and technical support 39%. Very close race between community and library. Okay, I'm now going to move to the next poll. What was the first word that came to your mind when you heard of the Global Action Partnership features? So when you heard about the library, the community, and the technical support, I see the word great, collaboration, wow, timely, collaboration is huge. So that means very many people have put it in. Needed is also quite big. Network is quite big, I like that. Helpful is quite big. Yay exists. Opportunity for change, outstanding. Cooperation, it was time. Climate action, impact. Support. Harmonization, implementation of treaty. Very curious to hear which treaty that is. Waste management, equity, good stuff. So lots of great answers. I'll just give it a bit more time for those who are still typing. I see some participants are still typing. Finally, mutual learning, long-term, outstanding, partnership. I see some people are still typing, but I'm just about to move to the next one. So looking forward, knowledge sharing, mentoring, very necessary. I like the mentoring thought. Recycling, plastics treaty. Okay. And then I'm going to, at this moment, perhaps move to the next one. So I can see some people are still typing, but because of time constraints, I am going to need to move on. So would you like to share additional feedback with the Global Action Partnership for EPR? And this one is going to be open during the entire call, but also open for another 2 days after the call. And so please feel free to respond. You can respond with as many responses as you'd like, and you can also give a bit more detail than just saying yes or no. So tell us yes, because this and that, or yes. So we're looking forward to hearing a bit more in terms of content. So there's some freedom here to type a bit longer responses. I see somebody says the South Africa perspective, recycled content. So looking forward to seeing all these responses about the feedback. I see 17 people typing. And so I'm very excited to see how that's going to end up looking. At this moment, however, I want to make sure that we don't keep you too long in the call. And to do that, I'm now going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a very exciting panel discussion. I'm going to introduce the panelists.
Elizabeth, if I may just interrupt you 2 seconds. Just because we noticed that there are questions that people are typing in Slido, but we cannot answer them. So maybe if we could encourage everyone to use the Q&A function in Zoom instead. And then if there are more questions coming up, during the panel discussion, they can be addressed then.
Okay, great. So my speakers are very generously offering to respond to questions in the Q&A function of Zoom. So if you have a question that you really would like answered during this session, please type it in the Q&A function of Zoom. Thank you, Peter, for the very generous offer. And I see that there should be 10 questions right now in the Q&A function in Zoom. So speakers, panelists, have a chance to look at that as well and see how you can respond. Okay, I'm going to introduce the panelists. The first panelist I'm going to introduce is also a member of a co-partnership that helped to set up the Global Action Partnership. And this is John Duncan from WWF. So WWF has been involved in this partnership from the beginning and has also been working in the area of waste management for some time. John Duncan is the initiative lead for WWF's No Plastics in Nature initiative. He is responsible for coordinating WWF's work on plastic pollution across multiple national WWF offices and is also the Secretariat co-lead for the Business Coalition for a Global Plastics Treaty. He holds an MBA and an MSc in Environmental Science and Policy and is based in Cape Town in South Africa. I also have the pleasure to introduce to you Professor Aliu Jauro, the Director General of the National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, NESREA, from Nigeria. Professor Aliu Jauro is the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of NESREA. He assumed office on the 25th of March, 2019. He is a fellow of the Chemical Society of Nigeria, CSN, as well as a member of the Institute of Chartered Chemists of Nigeria, MICON, and a member of the Polymer Institute of Nigeria, MPIN. The next panelist I have the pleasure to introduce is Roberto Benetello. Roberto Benetello is the Chief Executive Officer of the Malaysian Recycling Alliance, MAREA. MAREA is Malaysia's first voluntary, not-for-profit, industry-driven EPR platform to tackle consumer packaging waste issues. He is the founder, company director, and until March 2023, the executive director of BCSD Malaysia Berhad, the Business Council for Sustainable Development in Malaysia. Prior to that, he was the CEO of the EU Malaysia Chamber for Commerce and Industry. I'd also like to introduce to you Madi Kwena, the coordinating and commissioner member of the South African Waste Pickers Association. Madi is the national coordinating and committee member of the South Africa Waste Pickers Association and has been a waste picker for the past 10 years. She was an active member of writing and discussing groups in the International Alliance of Waste Pickers Constitution and of their EPR policy discussions. And finally, I'd like to introduce Roland Brake. Roland is an EPR policy expert, Public Waste Agency of Flanders. He is an expert on EPR policies working for the Flemish Waste Agency, OVAM. Based on his experiences with the running of EPR schemes in Belgium, he's looking to enhance the scope of the instrument and to apply it to new waste streams. He also engages in international projects to learn and to share. Thank you very much to our panelists for being willing to participate today. I'm going to be requesting that you turn on your cameras, and I'm going to ask FIFA to help me to make sure that we spotlight all of you so that we share the screen. Everybody can see us. Great. I see Roberto. John, Madi, welcome.
Thank you.
Roland, welcome. I think there's one person. Great. I think we now finally have everyone. If I can ask Andrew if you can check whether the OECD system can rename Professor Jauro. We still have him as Angelina. I tried to rename him, but the name tag sticks. But I do know that I am speaking to you, Professor Jauro. And I would like to pose the first question to you. So, Professor Jauro, how do you see the EPR could contribute to addressing plastic pollution? And what role could the Global Action Partnership play? If I may ask you to unmute yourself, I think you're still mute.
Thank you very much, Malova. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think the EPR can contribute to addressing plastic pollution in a lot of ways. First of all, the EPR would encourage product redesign and innovation by producers in order to enhance the recyclability of the waste product, right from the packaging and also other items. Secondly, EPR would promote the provision of collection and recycling infrastructure that were not in place, especially in our countries where we adopted the PRO model. So producers are expected to contribute so that the incentives can be used in establishing this infrastructure. It can also help in providing incentives for the waste collection and recycling. The EPR can also enhance stakeholders' collaboration along all the value chains. We have the government, the regulators, we have the collectors and the recyclers. Likewise, the GAP, Global Action Partnership, will play a significant role in ensuring that EPR works. One, they can do that by sharing information globally on successes recorded in other countries in the implementation of EPR, so that other countries can learn from it and can just copy, try to implement. They can also assist by bringing information to bear on what multinational producers are operating in the developed countries, so that we also in the underdeveloped and the developing countries will insist that they do the same thing. Thirdly, they can contribute in the area of advocacy and awareness campaign, so that there will be adoption and implementation of EPR globally, not in just specific countries, so that everything will be taken at a global stage. And fourthly, there's an issue of knowledge sharing and capacity building. I believe the GAP can contribute. We have had some of the discussions we have had. Good enough is one of the things they are looking at. Also, in the area of collaboration and partnership, I believe GAP can foster collaborations between industries, the regulators, and other role players. The GFU can also provide technical assistance and provide guidance in how to go about this EPR implementation. The EPR can also develop global tools for measurement and data collection. There is need to have a database in all countries operating EPR so that we know what we're doing. The EPR also play a role in research and innovation, assist countries to carry out some research on how they manage their waste in implementing the EPR in order to benchmark and know successes recorded. And also they can play a role in monitoring and evaluation of the EPR process. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Lots of ideas on the role that the Global Action Partnership can play. And I'm looking forward to see how that plays out. I'd like to then go to Roberto next and ask him, UNEP has just announced that the Global Action Partnership will support Maria's efforts in setting up an EPR scheme in Malaysia. What are the challenges you're currently facing?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the question. So firstly, we, Maria, are very thankful to UNEP, GIZ, WWF, OECD, and Prevent Waste Alliance for being included in the Global Action Partnership for EPR. We are in Malaysia, but everywhere else at a very special juncture. We see the private sector that is embracing EPR globally. Drivers are strong, and there is a strong push for sustainability from all sides. This is a great opportunity for us in Malaysia, but I'm sure it is in many countries. So we are a voluntary industry-led coalition And we want to be a model of how the private sector can play a substantial role before the transition into a mandatory EPR system that will happen a few years down the line here in Malaysia. So we want to assist the government in this period, in this transition, in crafting optimal EPR policies and regulations. And also we want to leverage the experience of our members, our member companies, our contributors, without reinventing the wheel. They've had successes in many other jurisdictions, and we need to leverage that. It's very important, it was actually mentioned before, that we, as an EPR platform, we become also an enabler, and we try to build capacity, for example, when it comes to collection, sorting, and recycling, focusing on all packaging material, high value and low value materials. So that's another challenge that we have here in Malaysia. We want to contribute to effective communication, education, and public awareness. So we need to really contribute and change the mindset of people here, and try to move as fast as possible towards the separation at source and higher recycling rates. A key challenge here in Malaysia is getting households to understand that recycling is a civic duty. So engagements with communities, encouraging recycling and sustainable habits, especially with the younger generations, is a very, very important issue. At the same time, we need effective strategies to pull packaging back to the loop by working with supply chain participants. So I'm talking about recyclers, aggregators, collectors, and very, very important, the informal sector. Also, this was mentioned before. We believe that the informal sector needs to be included in this transition. One, because they are important actors. Two, because it has to be a just transition. So formalize and elevate are the key words. We want to formalize, we want to help formalize and elevate the informal sector. And we also want to attract and motivate them. Industry and adequate policies are needed to create the demand for secondary raw materials and to design our products to be recyclable. So we must stay focused on design for recycling, circularity, and develop new packagings that ensure they can be easily recycled in the future. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing right now.
Thank you. That's quite a long list of challenges. So coming back to you, what will be the priority? What will be your priority areas that you will address with the support of a Global Action Partnership?
We have crafted a list. It's a bit of a long list. So, and also we have been asked to reduce that list because obviously it cannot be done. But let me just mention a couple of things. We need help in identifying different recovery and collection methods and models. And we need to understand how they can actually be, plugged into the current waste management system in Malaysia, and work with, the government-led system. So this is an important part. We need help in understanding how to set up, for example, fees and financial mechanism and control mechanisms. Expanding the membership and producer engagement is another important area. Public awareness, I said that before. Here, a big challenge is to change the mindset. So we want to understand what has been done in other countries, in other jurisdictions, what has been successful, and we want to apply this in Malaysia. Policy and regulatory framework, this will have to be done from scratch. So how can we assist the government of Malaysia to do that? And obviously, we need help from experts in providing the government with the right advice, and also support in drafting requests for proposals, because we will have to deal with a big number of service providers moving forward. So these are some of the requests. We have, as I said to you, we have already reduced the list, but very, very happy to get this support from you guys.
And very good to hear that you're being ambitious with what you can do. I'm going to switch perspective a bit and go to waste pickers as perspective. So I'm going to go to Madi. Speaking from the waste speaker's perspective, do you find that you share the views of the previous speakers on the challenges, or do you have a different experience?
Thank you, Elizabeth, for your time. I hope I'm audible. Some of the challenges that the previous speaker is talking about, we do share, but we do have some different perspective. Like, for instance, for us as waste speakers, EPR for packaging tends to improve material recycling market, yes, but it's attracting new competition for waste speakers that they are struggling to compete with. And that is the challenge, while our government incentive remains so minimum. Now, those are the challenges that we're facing. Another thing is the support that we speakers in South Africa and other parts of the world remains in the form of pilot projects or tenders. Then you will find out that some of the waste speakers cooperative, they don't, the rules that are attached to those tenders, and it really doesn't, in many times, does not manifest into the actual partnership with waste speakers as the key stakeholders that need to be integrated in the regulations, in that it will ensure the success and the sustainability of waste. Another thing is what do we think is any related waste management system specifically cannot work if they don't recognize the waste speakers' role and the historic contribution that waste speakers did in the value chain. Because, to be honest, we do have a contribution in the value chain.
I'm not quite sure what happened, but I think we might have lost Maddie. I know she's joining us from South Africa, and there are sometimes challenges. Oh, she's back. Welcome back.
It's not because of the load shedding. We are in shedding right now.
Yes.
I think it's because of load shedding. Yes.
I think so as well. I was going to ask
now,
if you think it's easier for you to speak without video.
Okay, let me switch it off.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Another thing that to continue what I was saying, any related waste management system specifically cannot work if it doesn't recognize the role of waste speakers, as I was saying. And we're hoping to see that the should recognize and include waste speakers in the policy making and co-designing of EPR programs, because we don't want just to be decided on, but we want to be part of discussions on how do they design the EPR programs, how do we fit in, how can we participate on it. That's what we want to see on the EPR. That for now is really so little, to make sure that the collectors are recognized and as the service providers, because we believe that the work that we're doing, we servicing, we're giving the service to our local municipalities, and we don't want to do it as a free laborers, but we want to see it as something that will be paid, to have fair remuneration, to get the improved infrastructures, to have support on administration, and to see that waste speakers their lives are improved and the working condition is really conducive.
Thank you, Maddie. Talking about the role of waste speakers, how were waste speaker guidelines developed in South Africa? Did the waste speakers have a role? Were your demands included in the process?
Thank you, Elizabeth, for the question. Yes, the guidelines on waste speaker integration was developed through participatory and stakeholder process. That through evidence from academic research, as well as international experiences, stakeholders' expertise, and the needs of waste speakers were centered in the process, and waste speakers were being part of the stakeholders. They were the key stakeholders in the process of developing the guidelines. And on our demands is that the EPR that we are hoping for is the mandatory and government-led, where we will see that, come again?
Sorry, I was just listening.
Okay. We're hoping for the EPR that is mandatory and government-led. And we're hoping to see that our demands are being addressed as we are the part of the community, and knowingly that we've been working at the sector for so long. Because for now in South Africa, the waste speakers recover approximately 80 to 90% of post-consumer paper and packaging collected for recycling in the country. And we feel that we are the backbone of the recyclable that are, being redirected away from the landfill. That is why we're having the campaigns like zero waste to landfill and separation at source, to make sure that we're helping. We're not just saying, okay, this is what need to happen, but we are hands-on doing, making sure that the community is aware of separation at source and the zero waste to landfill. What should they do? They need to form their backyard garden to make sure that their biodegradable waste is not going to the landfill, and they separate their waste from home to make sure that the dry waste is being collected by waste speakers. And as South Africa moves forward in implementing the newly passed EPR regulation for packaging in 2021, we are happy to see that the enrollment of waste speakers in the national registration, because right now in South Africa, we've got the national registration where waste speakers will be able to be tracked down when the PROs and government start the payment fees. They will know where waste speakers are located. They will know who's supposed to get what and how to give waste speakers the benefits that it is due for them. And the data, it will be easy for government to get government and PROs and anybody in that way to see and get the data of waste speakers. Who are they? Where are they working? Lastly, I think we find ourselves continuing negotiations with government, PROs in a meaningful, respectful integration of waste speakers. We feel that we are part of the work. We feel that there's no discrimination because we can voice out our need. We can voice out what is our rights, and our demands can be heard. And we know that there are people who are working with us, and that's a good thing to experience. Finally, I would like to say on my intervention, we need to generate recognition and opportunities for informal waste speakers to access labor and social protection. And we need to advance an advancement within material management system and decision-making processes, and accessible pathways to advance in value chain without exclusion or and affiliated workers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maddie. And I think you've addressed some of the questions which we already had in the Q&A, because I'd seen some questions there around waste speakers. So thank you for your comprehensive response. I'm going to go back to Jauro. Madi has just told us about a preference for mandatory systems, and Nigeria has in place a mandatory EPR scheme. Are your success stories in Nigeria similar or different to the ones that we had from Malaysia or from South Africa in the past presentations?
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I can say our experience in Nigeria is also similar to what we had. One of the major challenges in Nigeria is the existence of illegal sector players, what we call informal collectors, and we also have informal recyclers. They exist, they do their business without enrolling into the formal EPR. So it makes the issue of especially collection very difficult, and also getting enough raw materials for the recycling sector. Secondly, there's also resistance from the producers in joining the program. They're always lagging behind, not willing to join, even though it's mandatory. So the agency is trying to compel them to join by sending them compliance notices. Very soon we'll start enforcement. In fact, we are going to drag some of them to the court of law. And also there's lack of clear understanding of how it works. Some of the role players have not yet understood how it works. So there's need for a lot of engagement to get them understand the process. Likewise, when it comes to delineation of responsibility, the among stakeholders is always difficult, especially in Nigeria, where a consumer nation, most of the products are imported. So in our EPR guidelines, we define producers as those that import even the products apart from those produced. Yes. And also there's lack of political will and government support. They don't provide enough budgetary provision, especially for the regulator, to ensure that the law is enforced to join. Likewise, there's lack of strong regulatory framework. There's need to strengthen it, even though in Nigeria, the agency's mandate is backed by an act of the National Assembly. We also have the EPR guidelines. So we are talking to see how we can have the EPR Act to strengthen it. There's also a lack of funds. I mentioned that from the man, and there's need for a clear system design and implementation to suit our stage. And there's also inadequate producers' engagement and responsibility. And also there's inadequate consumer awareness and participation. There's need for more sensitization of consumers. They need to play their role. It's for their own good to even safeguard their environment. So we are doing that. And also lack of adequate monitoring and enforcement, which has to do with inadequate government support for funding, and also the stakeholders' engagement is inadequate. So there's need for a broader stakeholders' engagement, and I believe the Global Action Partnership would assist in addressing most of these problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Jauro. Lots of areas for the Global Action Partnership to support. I'm looking forward to hearing a bit more about that soon. I'll go to you, Roland, and in contrast to the countries we just had from, the EU has in place a set of EPR directives with a number of countries having systems in place for a long time now. What are the success stories and what challenges still exist?
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. So that's right. In Europe, we have legislation and that has pushed for EPR systems for 4 product groups. We have the packaging waste, electronics, end-of-life vehicles, and the batteries. So every EU member state, they has at least 4 EPR schemes in place, and that for over 10 to 20 years. That's a bit the picture also Peter showed in the beginning. And momentum, it's still there. This year, 2023, we're introducing EPR on sub-items, single plastic items that are in litter waste in Europe. At this moment, Europe is discussing legislation on an EPR for textile waste, so it's still going on. However, we can also notice that when there is no EU legislation, in fact, little has happened. How many countries have really done something more than what Europe has demanded? I think France is an example with about 14 EPR schemes, but in many other countries, much less is happening. So I think we had the enthusiasm and the initial uptake like 20 years ago, but since then, yeah, maybe we're rather seeing some stagnation in many countries in Europe. So every effort, I think, pushing forward is certainly welcome. So maybe I hope that the General Action Partnership might contribute also to this. And when we look at the results of those EPR systems in place in Europe for the last 10 to 20 years, I think it is quite fair to say that they really helped in boosting selective collection and recycling rates. For instance, if I take my own country, Belgium, we saw plastic packaging waste recycling rates going up from about 35% to 60% in the last year. And same holds for batteries and electronics and all those other EPR waste flows. And I think these are great results, and they would probably not have happened if we didn't have EPR schemes set in place. However, I think nowadays we're becoming more and more sensitive to not what we achieved, not the 60% that we're collecting, but we're more looking at the 40% that we've not collected yet. So that's where the focus is going to. And if I may just add one other perspective to this challenge, as I just mentioned, we increased recycling rate of plastic packaging in Belgium from 35 to 60%. But in those 20 years in which we achieved that increase, also the amount of plastic packaging put on the market each year has increased. So that implies that notwithstanding the fact that we are capturing a greater share, a greater percentage, that's when looking at the amount of plastics still not collected in tons, we've hardly achieved to bring that level down. So there's certainly room for improvement also in Europe.
Thank you, Roland. What you say reminds me of a song that says 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think I'm going to go to John and tell him we've just heard you and your thoughts about what's happening in Europe. What is happening in the business community? What is the narrative about EPR in the business community? I think we've also had quite a bit about resistance from producers in other contexts that are not European. So what is the narrative, and is that changing over time? If so, how?
Yes, thanks, Elizabeth. I mean, I think WWF has worked with multiple stakeholders and with businesses in many countries around the world on this topic. And I think we've seen, like, historically, many businesses used to fight against the implementation of EPR. They kind of viewed it as an additional cost for them. And this, however, I do think seems to be changing right now as these companies face increasing public pressure to be accountable for their products at the end of life. And I think what's exciting is you see a kind of a concurrent growth in interest from the kind of governments and negotiators sitting in the treaty discussions at this point in time, where EPR is repeatedly raised by many states as one of the kind of core elements that they'd like to see in the treaty as kind of a mandatory thing that all countries should be driving forward. I think coming back to the kind of perspective of companies, supporting or being involved in an EPR scheme gives a company this kind of, I guess, a tangible step which they can take to respond to this pressure from governments and the general public. But I think we also see that companies also now recognize that they're not going to be able to deliver on many of their own kind of corporate commitments to recycled content or collection without effective EPR schemes in place. So, I think we've seen this kind of almost 180-degree turnaround from many companies who suddenly realize, actually, we need this in order for us to deliver on what we promised to our shareholders and our customers. And so I think, yeah, there's definitely a growing voice of companies out there calling for EPR. You see this through, WWF's One Source Coalition and the Ellen MacArthur's EPR statement, which both have got significant support from corporates around the world. I also think that you see that these companies that have been involved in voluntary efforts in the past see the opportunity of kind of sharing the burden now on a mandatory basis with all of their competitors, so reducing their own costs, but also bringing more financing into the system. So you'll see them kind of, hopefully more and more companies actually supporting this call for kind of mandatory EPR. And I think the last thing I'd highlight is that, the challenge now, and it's timely that we have the Global Action Partnership to maybe support this process, is that we need to turn these high-level commitments from businesses and the support that we hear from businesses into kind of on-the-ground engagement and actual support for those kind of individual national governments at the national level, which is where the rubber hits the road. And that means, tackling some of the challenges like the just transition that we heard from Maddie and Roberto. And yeah, I think this is something that we really need to dig into, because that's where, we can really see EPR starting to actually drive changes. Because as we've heard from many of the speakers, in some places, we're really just starting to kind of get an idea of what it might be able to do.
Thank you. You just ended on the right note for me to segue back to Roland and ask him, what does he think is needed to develop EPR as an instrument further?
Okay. As I just mentioned, nowadays we're more sensitive to what we are not achieving. We're no longer proud of the 60% we are collecting, but we're focusing on the 40% we are not collecting. Why? Because what is happening with that waste? Often it is exported, often out of Europe, to be treated in often circumstances that are not socially and environmentally very high levels. It is littered on the ground, and it's ending up in water systems. It might contribute to the pollution of the oceans. We are becoming aware of the social impacts when losing critical materials, like the rare earths and the metals, the social and the environmental impacts of the mining of those materials. So, yeah, we want to improve that kind of efficiency of our systems. And this is certainly important for product groups like batteries and electronic appliances, because I think next to focusing on plastics, what the Global Action Partnership is working on in the first phase, we also should look at those products, certainly batteries, that is booming business in the years to come. Very important impact on mining in those countries where those critical materials are. So we certainly have to try to close that circle and make it more circular. And then more recently also, the impact of chemicals of concern is coming really to growing importance in our policies and in our schemes. So I think, to put it very short, we are moving from a quantity approach, where we are thinking about how many tons have we collected. We're going to a quality approach. What are the major concerns, the major impacts we have to tackle with our EPR systems? So we should not just think, well, here in Europe, we have those nice EPR schemes running in our country, so we're fine, we're okay. At this moment, it's not enough. Impact is still very high. We're not achieving enough. So we should really be thinking on how can we stretch the responsibilities of the producers beyond our own borders and take a more holistic approach on what the EPR system should be doing and what the real impacts are that we need to tackle.
Thank you, Roland. Let me go to John. John, I think we've heard from a wide range of speakers, a wide range of perspectives. We've heard from governments with mandatory systems, but struggling to implement them. We've heard about voluntary systems. We heard about the waste pickers' perspective. And from what we've had, do you see any role, or is there a specific way that you think the Global Action Partnership could enable and support various actors to overcome these challenges that they outlined?
Thanks, Elizabeth. I mean, I think the fact that there are so many challenges highlights the need for the Global Action Partnership. And I mean, I think over the last few years, a number of organizations, including all of the organizations involved in the Global Action Partnership, have really been working very hard to promote and support EPR development. And I think that's why we've got to the point that we've got to today. And the reality is that even through these past efforts, we can see that we've made progress in that more and more governments across the world, and particularly in developing countries, are really looking at EPR as a potential part of the solution, and are adopting these kind of EPR frameworks within their policy frameworks. But as we've heard from all of the speakers today, setting up effective EPR schemes is by no means a plug-and-play solution. We have a massive diversity of countries and contexts out there. But this, what is common is this overarching concept of increasing producer accountability. And that seems to be now indeed a kind of a global expectation, which I think is really good. I just think it's important to highlight that, it's good systems need to be worked through with all of the different stakeholders. And it's clear that, more concerted efforts and coordination is needed to implement these systems at a global scale. And this is something perhaps that, the global treaty can also help to facilitate, pushing the kind of creation of these kind of bare minimum requirements for what EPR should look like. And I think on that point, I'd also want to just come back to what Roland said earlier. We do need to be careful of saying that EPR is the only solution or the solution that will solve all of our problems when it comes to plastic pollution. I think we need to be pulling all the levers and more to address the problem. I think EPR represents a very specific opportunity for us to get involved businesses in this end-of-life accountability, and it's a fantastic one that we see that the GAP, or the Global Action Partnership, really can help to contribute to sharing this kind of through the library, through the expert help desk, and in convening this broader community of people working on EPR. And that's, I think, why all of the different partners involved in the consortium have come together, saying, we can do this better together. And hopefully with the support of this community on this call and more broadly, in a couple of years' time, we'll be talking more about the solutions that we've achieved rather than challenges we face.
Thank you, John. And thank you to all my panelists for being so kind and taking time to join us this afternoon. And I agree, John. I'm really looking forward to having a call one day in the future where we will be talking more about the solutions and more about the achievements we made. And to help us all to understand how we can collaborate better towards addressing and overcoming these challenges, I'm going to be handing over now to Nicole, who is going to present us with the options to get engaged. Nicole?
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you also especially to all the panelists. I think that was super interesting. And I could see in both the Slido as well as the Q&A of the Zoom call that there's hundreds of questions to the panelists, to the speakers. And unfortunately, we won't be able to answer all of them, especially if they're very technical in nature right now. But would rather ask you to post those questions again in our request form if they're very technical and like a real request for support, or to join the EPR community, where we can then connect you with other stakeholders, because it's precisely the EPR community's aim and ambition to bring together stakeholders, exchange experiences, bring forward different innovations. I already saw a lot of questions around the topic of reuse, eco-design, also the topic of coming up with a global extended producer responsibility scheme and so on. So take up all these ideas, bring them into the community, and and we'll try to connect you with other stakeholders who are interested in that topic, and then we can further the discussion there. Also on our website, as Dorothee presented, you can make use of all the resources that are already there. So far, it's mainly the resources of the consortium partners or the core partners of the Global Action Partnership. However, you are all invited to share your resources there as well. So if you have any publications, please feel free to send them to us so that we can upload them to our library. Please note that they will also be reviewed, and we will try to have like a small quality check before uploading resources as well. And I saw also there was a question in the Q&A about like different categories or subtopics for the library. So yes, we can add additional topics to the library. So far, it's just the topics that we are addressing through the publications that are uploaded, but of course we can add topics there as well. Then please also feel free to access technical support through our request form. And please also note that the technical support and the extensiveness of the technical support will depend a little bit also on the funding that we have available. The process will be that we will check which requests come in and then try to find the most adequate support. So this could be either through the expert pool, and I've already seen that some of you are willing to join the expert pool, which makes me particularly happy. Please do so by filling in the expert pool format on our website. We're also happy then to redirect some of the questions and technical support requests by redirecting the proponents basically to other experts or other countries or PROs who have gone through a similar process for a peer learning exchange. So really making use here of the knowledge and experience in the community. And since we need money for all of this, I would also like to invite anyone out there who is interested in supporting this initiative with funding. If you have any funds available for extended producer responsibility and you want to channel them and make sure that your funds are going into a coordinated initiative and the support is being allocated in a coordinated manner, please feel free to reach out to us. And last but not least, and we've mentioned so throughout the day, please feel free to come back with any ideas, any feedback, any suggestions on how we can improve this Global Action Partnership. By contacting any of the speakers that you've seen today or the Prevent Secretariat. We're more than happy to take up these suggestions. And I think a lot of my answers also in the Q&A have gone in this direction. Please note that our community works in a bit of a way that we try to take up any questions or demands that are out there. So we work on a demand driven basis. And if we see that there's enough people who are interested in a topic, we bring you together and then basically bring forward the topic. So it's really up to all of you to make this Global Action Partnership work the way we are envisaging it to work. And therefore, I would really, really invite you all to get involved and engaged now in whichever manner suits you best. And with that, I would like to say thank you and hand back to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Nicole, also for bringing us to this moment. I think we're now at the end of the call. We're at the end of this launch. I really enjoyed hearing about the various functionalities of the website. It is now live. I'm just looking at the screen because I'm wondering if we have a slide with a website link. Maybe not. Okay. And someone is asking if we can post a link to the website. So we are going to share a link to the website. I think we are going to send an email to all the participants of the call using the function that Zoom provides. But yes, here is the link to the website. So for those who wanted a link to the website, here you go. Thank you so much for your attention. We're so grateful that you found time to come. I would like to thank some people who were very important in participating in preparing this call and making it happen, but also in making sure that the Global Action Partnership took place. So regarding the Global Action Partnership, Peter, John, Dorothy, Feng, Ambro, please turn on your cameras. Thank you so much for all the work you've done to realize the Global Action Partnership. I'm going to be asking technical assistants, Afifa, if we can spotlight them quickly. Okay, great. And then there are a lot of people who've been working behind the scenes to make this go smoothly. Noel, I see you forgot to include yourself on this list. Thank you so much, Noel. Please turn on your camera. And then I would also like to thank Marcus Luque from GIZ, Ranji, I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly, from UNEP, Vivian, it's good to see you, thank you. Andrew from OECD, thank you. Fritjof, OECD, thank you. And Angelina from the Prevent Secretariat, thank you. Without you, this moment would not have been arrived at. So these are the people who have been working to make this happen, ladies and gentlemen. We're very grateful to them, and thank you all for joining us today afternoon. We enjoyed having your presence here, and we look forward to engaging more on the platform. Just to mention before you go, the Slido remains open, and you can always give us your feedback. I've seen quite an amount of feedback there, but we're looking still for more feedback. There are always things that we can change and improve, so please share your feedback. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye, and have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.